One night while sleeping, someone breaks into Thomas and Janell Whitmore's home. The big-breasted Janell tells Thomas to wake up, and he goes downstairs with a bat. Luckily, the intruders kept out. Afterwards, they moved to Thomas' hometown in North Carolina. Thomas has convinced the reluctant and pregnant Janell that starting fresh can help a lot with the trauma, but she is still on edge and so over it. At the grocery parking lot, Thomas bumps into his high school classmate, Andrea Carter. She invites him to stop by her house for dinner and game night with her and her husband Vernon, and asks him to bring Janell too. She then informs him that they're having a class reunion the following week at the old community hall and urges him to attend. Thomas gets home, and he immediately informs Janell about Andrea's invitation. When Janell asks if she's an old fling, he says she's just a friend, so you already know what that means. Shortly after, a neighbor named Gary appears on their doorstep with a cooler containing a bloody piece of the buck he just took down. Janell, although uncomfortable, thanks him, and he tells her that they can just ask him if they want more. Thomas and Janell show up at Andrea and Vernon's house. While playing cards, Thomas gets disappointed that despite Andrea and Vernon being warm and welcoming towards Janell, Janell acts rudely towards them. When Thomas asks Vernon how his job hunt is going, and Vernon shares that he's struggling to get a job because of his record, Janell kind of hits on him. When Andrea asks Thomas if he's going to the reunion, Janell says she won't come because she doesn't know them. The attitude is almost as nasty as her makeup. On the walk home, Thomas reprimands Janell for being disrespectful. She angrily responds that she's pregnant and tired in a state she doesn't know because he thought moving there would fix everything. When he tells her that he's trying to give her a better and safer life, she corrects him, saying he has forced her to live small, and reminds him that he's lucky to have her. Thomas is a good man, Savannah. Thomas attends the reunion and reunites with Big Back Miles, an old classmate with whom he had shared a dark past. Miles, who is shocked to see Thomas back, says he didn't expect to see him after the incident, prompting Thomas to say that life has changed. Thomas then shares that he's married and that they're expecting. Miles tells Thomas to hit him up if he ever needs something, prompting Thomas to ask if he's still in that life. Miles responds that he is still about that life. Soon, Thomas hires Miles for a contract killing, a clean hit for 20 grand. When Miles reminds Thomas that there will be no refund after they start their plan, Thomas says that he's unsure because it's his wife. He shares that Janell has been acting differently, making him think that the baby isn't his. Well, this movie took a huge turn. Miles shares his own relationship problem, saying he had a thing with a girl in Atlanta, but she started acting up and eventually ghosted him. Thomas shares that he thought things were going to be okay once they moved, and says he hates the person she's turning him back into, so Miles allows him to back out. Thomas eventually ends up pushing through, reminding him that nobody can know, just like last time. Janell heads to the Carter's house and flirtily asks Vernon to come to her house to fix her plumbing issues, using his job as a handyman to seduce him. Unbeknownst to them, Thomas is watching them. Loyal to Andrea, Vernon refuses by telling her to ask Thomas to fix it, upsetting her.
Okay, but Vernon, what about my sink?
Vernon is not about to touch her dirty, overused pipe. Later at home, Thomas asks Janell who she's texting, and she says she's having a girl talk with Andrea. When she starts acting up again, telling him that he's the only one who wanted to move there, he says they can move if she really wants to be in Atlanta, and he'd do anything for her. Hearing this, she asks if he'd raise a baby that isn't his too. Upon seeing him upset, she laughs and tells him she's joking. Playing around with a forehead and middle part like that is crazy. After Janell leaves her phone on the kitchen counter, Thomas checks her phone. He sees her text to Vernon, asking him to come over to fix her sink because Thomas can't fix anything, and that she'll kill to have a man like Vernon, prompting Thomas to break down. Vernon is fine, but Thomas fine too. Janell is crazy. He quickly collects himself and leaves the house, telling Janell that he has an emergency at work. Shortly after, Janell calls Vernon to ask him again to come over to fix her sink because Thomas wasn't able to fix it. While Vernon is fixing her sink, Janell flirts with him, but he doesn't respond. When he's done, she asks him to fix her cabinets that have loose nails, but Vernon just lends her his hammer because he ain't finna nail her. When Thomas, who has been watching from his car outside their house, sees Vernon walk out of the house, he gets annoyed. Thomas then texts Miles, green-lighting their plan. CCTVs in the Whitmore house are taken down, and the security system is set up to make it easy for Miles to enter. Later that night, Miles enters the house and finds the hammer Vernon lent Janell, which he then takes with him to use as the murder weapon. Meanwhile, Thomas waits in his car, observing from outside the house. I'm sorry, but shouldn't he be elsewhere building up an alibi? Janell calls Vernon, who's annoyed to see her name pop up on his phone yet again. She asks him to fix her sink because it's leaking, tells him Thomas has an emergency call at work, and that it'll be quick so he can immediately go home to Andrea. Vernon arrives.
You can't stay too long.
It'll only take a second.
Trifling. He fixes the kitchen sink, and Janell tries to seduce him yet again. When he asks for his hammer back, she says she just left it there, but has no idea where it is. He lets it go, saying he has another one at home anyway, and leaves. Janell is upset that her pipes were filled. Vernon gets home and makes dinner for Andrea, but Andrea acts cold towards him. While Janell is on her phone in the kitchen, Miles creeps behind her. Shortly after, Miles calls Thomas, tells him that the job is done and he's currently handling the body, and reminds him to bring his money. Later, Thomas enters his house and calls 911 to report that something might have happened to his wife because there's blood and glass everywhere, and his wife is not around, acting concerned. Soon, cops visit him to get his statement. He should be the primary suspect, but we dealing with Paw Patrol cops again. Thomas heads to the Carter's house, and on their porch, he tearfully says he can't believe that Janell is gone. When he adds that her death was brutal, saying the murder weapon is a hammer, Andrea, who is comforting him, wonders how he knew, prompting him to clarify that that's what the cop said. While Thomas continues to act regretful, saying he should have kept her safe, Vernon is watching them. The next day, Vernon wants to have lunch with Andrea, but she coldly says she's busy. When he asks if someone is keeping her company while he's away, she immediately shuts the idea down, but eventually apologizes, hinting that she is trifling. Later, Thomas asks Detective Sims if they already have a lead on Janell's killer. Sims says it's still a missing persons case because, although there were signs of struggle, there is no body, no evidence, and no eyewitness. Sims asks him to write down everything he remembers from that night, and later tells him that time has a way of eventually revealing the truth. Sims receives a tip that leads to Vernon being a person of interest in Janell's case. He then pulls out Vernon's record and sees he has priors. When Sims investigates the Whitmore's house again for the second time, he finds Vernon's hammer with Vernon's prints hidden behind a fridge. Andrea arrives at the Whitmore's house, and Thomas greets her and kisses her forehead. Inside, Andrea sees a bloodstain on the couch they're sitting on. Could be period blood, honestly. After Thomas proposes a toast to new beginnings, he asks her to move in with him and gives her a ring. When she tells him that it's too fast because it has only been 6 months since Janell disappeared, he says Janell is gone, and life doesn't stop for grief. Andrea is unsure, saying her relationship with Vernon is complicated and she's concerned about people's opinions. He says he doesn't care about people's opinions and tells her that she deserves a big eggplant. Sims arrests Vernon, who immediately denies killing Janell. When Andrea arrives, Vernon begs her to vouch for his innocence, but she just stands there looking dumb as fool. Andrea remembers asking Thomas if he was home the night Janell disappeared because he mentioned a hammer before anybody else did. He told her it's a lucky guess, but when she called it a detail, not a guess, he kicked her out of his house. Shortly after she left, Thomas looked at the life insurance money he received. Andrea later reads an article about Janell's disappearance. After reading that there is no murder weapon found, she realizes that Thomas has something to do with it. Andrea shares with Sims that Thomas told her that Janell was killed with a hammer when such information was not public or known. Sims says that they found a hammer during the second sweep at Thomas's home, behind the fridge, and Vernon's prints are on it. When she asks how that made Vernon the killer, he says they're thinking either he planted it there or Thomas covered for him. Andrea reiterates that Thomas knew about the hammer before anyone, insists that he did it because he wouldn't know that detail if he wasn't there, and concludes that he framed Vernon. But of course, the cop is dumb AF and doesn't listen to her. Andrea visits Vernon in prison, and he wastes no time in letting her know that he's angry at her. When she apologizes, he tells her that she's 6 months too late. He says he lost his name, his peace, and his wife. He tells her that he did his best for her, but she let him rot in prison.
I thought Janell was dead.
Oh, the acting is so good. Andrea shares about Thomas saying things he shouldn't have known. She tells him that she believes that the hammer was planted and he was set up. When she promises to fix things, he tells her that she's just doing it to clear her conscience. While Andrea is crying at the park, a couple with a baby passes by her. When the baby's toy falls on her feet, she immediately picks it up to return it. To her shock, the mom is Janell, and she is with big back Miles. As it turns out, Miles didn't kill Janell the night he was supposed to because he recognized her as the girl from Atlanta who ghosted him. What are the chances? Janell must have been spreading it for everyone. It was only then that he discovered that she was married, prompting her to apologize for not telling him, saying it was just fun for her. He confronted her for ghosting him, to which she said that she panicked and didn't know what to do. When he, in his disbelief, commented that she married his old classmate, she said she didn't know they knew each other. Miles then realized that Thomas knew about their affair, which was why Thomas hired him to get rid of her, a clean hit for 20 grand. When he asked if the baby was his, she said yes. Who else saw this twist coming from a mile away? Miles decided to fake Janell's death so that he could keep Janell alive, and they could start over and he could still get his money. As he was planning to stage a struggle, she told him that they could use the blood from Gary's bloody buck. Miles texted Thomas that the job was done, staged the crime scene, and got rid of the hammer. He then left with Janell, and they kept the baby. Andrea just stands there again looking dumb. And the movie ends. Why did Janell want big back Miles over Thomas? The Tubi logic in this pissed me off. Why the police not test the blood and realize it's not human blood? They could have used cell phone locations and records. What did you guys think of this Tubi mess?
Hey, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe now and turn on the notification because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. And if you like to watch more foolishness, click here or here.